Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast, where faith-driven leaders come to gain clarity, confidence, and courage in their leadership journey. I'm your host, Danita Cummins, and today we're diving into a topic that is foundational to every leader: influence. Luke 12:48 reminds us that to whom much is given, much will be required. Influence is a sacred trust, not just a personal asset, and so whether you're leading a team, big or small, you are entrusted with a sphere of influence. So the question is, how are you stewarding it? Today, we're going to break down what it means to lead with influence, not just authority, and we'll pull in some insights from leadership experts like Ken Blanchard, Liz Wiseman, and Oswald Sanders, along with some biblical wisdom to help you steward your leadership well. So grab your cup of coffee and let's get started. Doing things alone is entirely overrated. We all need a community to thrive. And that's why I'm part of an online community of writers and speakers, podcasters, and entrepreneurs called Creatives. And I love it. In the years since I joined this community, I've launched new ideas, and I finally executed the dreams that sat on the shelf for years. Seriously. And I was able to do this because of the outstanding group of mentors, exceptional training, and encouraging mastermind groups with my new friends who did and continue to give me invaluable feedback. Oh, and not to mention all the fun, because we have had lots and lots of fun. Have you ever said, I want to write a book? Or do you want to use your voice for the exciting world of podcasting? If so, Called Creatives is your best resource for up-to-the-minute industry training, expert advice, live coaching, and peer support like no other. Best-selling authors and speakers Allie Worthington and Lisa Whittle lead this community with a no-competition mission, and it shows. So join my friends and I in the Called Creative community. Head to my show notes, danitacummins.com/podcast, and click the link to get all the details to join. I promise you won't regret it. I look forward to seeing you in the community and watching you grow. What is true influence? So let's start with the key distinction. Influence is not the same as authority. Authority is positional. It comes with a title, but influence is earned. It comes through trust, credibility, and consistency. Here's a biblical example. Think of Joseph in Egypt, which is found in Genesis 41. He didn't seek power, but he faithfully managed his responsibilities, and because of his wisdom and his faith, he became a trusted leader who saved a nation from famine. In my book, Promise Over Purpose, I talk a lot about Joseph as we consider our identity and our purpose in Christ. And I find great encouragement in this story because I see how Joseph struggled. He didn't ask to be a leader, but early on in his life, God gave him dreams and a vision of what God had intended for him. But it was confusing. He didn't really understand it. And so he struggled. And then we see him suffer through many different things. He was sold into slavery by those he loved. He navigated persecution, lying, accusations, but all the while he stayed true to his faith and his character. And in doing so, he upheld his value and eventually was put in a position of authority where he could lead and protect those both that he loved and those that God had entrusted to him. We can learn a lot from just this one simple story about Joseph when we look at leadership. Ken Blanchard is the author of The New 1-Minute Manager, and he teaches that leadership is most effective when it is situational. We influence best when we meet people where they are, adapting our leadership style to serve their needs. So here's a question for you today. How are you using your influence, intentionally or reactively? And as we look at the verse that we use today in Luke 12:48 that we started the show with, the verse, to whom much is given, much will be required. We have said that a lot. I think for anyone who has a faith, or even if you are living in a world today where you're not serving in a church or a faith community, we've all heard that. And so the question we want to ask ourselves today as it applies to leadership is, as leaders, we must see influence not as power, but as a responsibility. Friend, that is the core reason why I started this podcast years ago, was because I truly believe deep down inside that we are entrusted with the care and safekeeping of others. And that could be a daunting task, but it is also a responsibility. So here are some key leadership principles and additional scripture to help you work through this. The first one is servant leadership. And we find this in a lot of writings in leadership school and teachings today. We also find it in biblical narratives. One of the references today is Mark 10:45, which says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." And J. Oswald Sanders, who is the author of Spiritual Leadership, reminds us that leadership requires humility and self-sacrifice. And that is not always easy to do because we're humans. And regardless of how we want to see it or not, we bring all of ourselves to the office and to the world every single day. So, servant leadership is one of the most important principles. Number 2 is multiplication over micromanagement. I was just watching a podcast the other day where they were talking about one of the number one challenges or leadership problems in organizations today is micromanagement. And I thought, is it the number one problem that we have today? But they had a whole conversation about micromanagement, what it looks like, and how we overcome it. Liz Wiseman, in her book Multipliers, says that great leaders don't hoard power, they develop others. Multipliers elevate the intelligence and the potential of those around them, while diminishers stifle growth. And we could probably all run down a list of our former bosses or former colleagues or current team members that seem to have that kind of trait. But what I would challenge you to do today is ask yourself, am I empowering my team or am I micromanaging them, right? And there are certain degrees of power that need to be applied at different times as a team grows and a team changes and a team is going through different seasons. For example, if I have a new team that's starting a task that's either very complicated, it has a very volatile result, meaning we really have to perform at a high degree of perfection, because if we don't, then we can have a significant risk to ourselves or others. Like when we're in the military, there's a lot of times in the military that literally the decision that you're making is life or death. So the stakes are really high. And in those cases, there's a lot of control, right? There's a lot of power applied. There's a lot of oversight, as it should be. But then as the team gets more developed, as they get stronger, as they learn about each other and they can execute that task, then you as a leader can kind of pull back the hand, right? So as you go across this continuum of leadership development or organizational growth, the power or how much power or management oversight that you apply looks different in each season and how the team grows and changes. And so the question you need to ask yourself in this season, based on our current configuration as a team and our structure, what we're trying to do, how new we are at this task or how seasoned we are, is my level of leadership helping to empower them or am I micromanaging them? And then the third one is execute with excellence. Larry Bossidy, which is the author of Execution, teaches that vision without disciplined execution is wasted effort. Influence is sustained when we follow through on our commitments. And I think that is so very true, right? How many times do we talk about vision on this podcast and why it is so important? If you don't know where you're going, how do you know if you ever got there? It's really hard. As we evaluate our organizations and excellence, influence is always an important part of where we are and where we're going. And so the actionable takeaway from this is I want you to write down your leadership mission in one sentence. Have you done that? We talk about that on the podcast a couple of episodes ago. As a faith-driven leader, what does that look like? How do you want to show up in the world every single day? This is just the next piece of that. Write down your leadership mission in one sentence, and does your daily influence reflect that? If we say that we have a vision to help people grow or lead them or help them overcome the barriers to be their best self, then are you taking little steps every single day in order to do that? That's a very important question as we ask ourselves as we're continuing to grow. And so here are 3 ways that you can lead with greater influence. The first one is that you want to clarify your leadership mission, which we've already talked about, because influence begins with clarity, and leaders who align with a mission can create a long-term impact. So that comes from Robert Kaplan, The Balanced Scorecard, and we'll add all these references and books and things in the show notes today so you can grab a copy of those. We need to clarify your leadership mission, and then we need to build on that every single day. Number 2 is that you want to build high trust relationships because people follow relationships, not titles. And we know that, right? We all know that in our world and where we live today. Trust is such an important element. If you listen to the previous podcast, we had Bill Flynn come on earlier in the month and we talked about leadership and influence. And he talks about that, how trust is such an important thing. I think he made the reference that it leaves on a Ferrari. And it was just an interesting analogy. Go check out that episode and listen to it. But the point is that trust takes a long time to get here, but it can leave and be destroyed in just a second. and that's important for us. So we want to build high trust relationships. And then the third step is to develop and empower others. We say this a lot. Empowerment sometimes looks really hard or nebulous or confusing, but it's really not. And the best leaders ask the right questions and they lift others up. So here's your call to action. I want you to identify one person this month that you can mentor. Are you mentoring someone? Maybe you are. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're mentoring people in an informal relationship, but you haven't really thought of that as I'm mentoring someone or someone is mentoring me. That happens a lot. We get into community with people. We have maybe a couple of people at work that are a couple of steps ahead of us, or we're a couple of steps ahead of them, and they come to our office and we talk, or maybe we have grab coffee, or we have side conversations, or they come to us and ask us for our advice or how to solve a particular problem. And that's all mentorship. I spent a lot of my life mentoring a variety of people. I never really realized it until a few years ago when I took a step back and realized how much mentoring I actually do. But it's a function of people being brought into my life and me sharing space with them and being genuinely concerned about their life and their heart. And so if you're not actively mentoring someone, I challenge you to identify one person this month that you can mentor. As we close, I want to challenge you to lead not just for today, but of course, for eternity. This podcast is all about faith-driven leaders and how we can equip and empower you to be the people that God has called you to be. I do understand that in this season of our life, sometimes it's hard to make the connection between our faith and our workspace. We struggle to compartmentalize this element of our life where we're like, hey, this is my faith life and this is my work life, or this is my marriage and my family life and this is my community life. But we are holistic beings and we don't really show up in segmented pieces in the world. Again, you bring all of yourself to the world every day, friend, whether you like it or not. I challenge you to really consider that. Where are you going? What are you doing? What is the point? When you get up every single day and you go to work or you go to church or you serve in your community or you love your family, what are you trying to do? What is the ultimate goal? And it is a really important reflection question, I think, that most of us skip over, because it really gives us clarity. So if I know where I'm going and I know what the ultimate goal is, and I know that God has called me to steward my influence well because He cares about the hearts and the lives that I'm in community with as well as my own, then I start to realize that leadership is not about status. It is about service. And so I offer that to you today. I want to ask you, the follow-up question is, what's your biggest leadership challenge right now? DM me or send a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to pop over to the Entrusted to Lead newsletter so you can stay up to date on the latest episodes. I truly appreciate you for all that you've done and all that you continue to do. We're super excited that the podcast is growing. If you have challenges or questions or things you'd like to talk about or things that you're struggling with, I truly do want to know. So send me a DM, shoot me a comment, leave something on Spotify or Apple, and definitely pop over to the website, danitacummins.com, and send a note. We would love to hear from you. If there are topics or things that you're working through that you would like a little bit more clarity on, or you just want to talk about it on the show, let me know, because I would love to have a conversation about these things. And if you haven't already subscribed to the Entrusted to Lead newsletter, I'm sending out a monthly Beyond the Boardroom summary at the end of every month that gives you a roll-up of all of these great resources and a whole bunch of other tools and techniques. If you haven't done that, pop over to the website and grab a copy today. I just want to encourage you to keep showing up every single day, even when it hurts, friend, because you matter. Okay, I hope you have an amazing day. I'll see you later.